Right. So now that everything is installed, what we want to do is create unit tests for our React apps or Next.js apps. And in here, you can see in Jest docs over here, you can see our framework guides. And then this is where we can test our React applications. Now, you can see on the right here, you can do it with create React app, set up without create React app. We have snapshot testing, DOM testing, and so on. We will be covering this in this crash course, so don't worry about that. But if you scroll down, you can see there's many examples of how you would kind of use our testing and unit tests that we have. So you can see all of these examples, but this is quite complicated. So what I want to do is break that down and let's just do it for our movie card component. So essentially, the way unit tests work is we need to create a specific file for them. So in this scenario here, this is a React component that you can see here is highlighted with the React symbol itself. But what we want to do is anything that contains test dot and then TS or TSX or whatever it may be, that is known as the unit test file. So for our index, we want to do index.test.tsx like so, because again, this is testing for JSX elements as well. So in here, we will have a couple of tests testing that it contains an image, it has the rating and so on. So now we have this file. If we hover over it, you can see this is a red in compared to the kind of normal React logo over here. So that just suggests that this is a test file. So now let's go ahead and create our first unit test. So generally, when we have a block and we want to test something, we would wrap it in something called describe. And this comes from Jest itself. So let's just do describe like so. And it's not coming from node test. So let me just delete that. And this is essentially like a callback function. So in here, we would have our callback like so. And this is just a simple example of the describe itself. So you can see here, cannot find name describe. Do you need to install type definitions for a test runner? So we can do that. So let's go ahead and install the Jest types. So if you missed installing anything, then what you can do is just basically the IntelliSense gives you the missing information of what you need to install. So now we can do Command Shift and P, and then let's restart our TypeScript server and now save. Now you can see it's showing an error saying expected two arguments but got one. So now what we want to do is this first argument is going to be the name of whatever the component we're testing in this example. So this is how it would work. So now let me save that. And what we're testing for here is the movie card component, or you can just say movie card like that. So first of all, we have our describe block in here. I'm just going to bring this down. The first argument is the name of the component that you're going to be testing. And then we have a callback that has a few different it tests, which this can be named as it or test itself. And then this will be testing for a specific thing to happen or a specific assertion or specific value to be in the test itself. So again, you can have more than one it block within the describe like this. So let me save that. And you can see here it says it should render correctly. And then you have your expectation in here. What you would normally do is render your component in this example and then have your expectation in as well after the component has been rendered. And then again, same thing with this one, it should display movie titles. So what we'll do here instead is delete this. Let's create our first test, which will be should, or we can do given, when, then, and so on. But I just want to keep it simple for now. So this unit test will be it renders the movie title and rating. So that's what the test is going to be. Now, how we would achieve this is in our index.tsx file, you can see here this movie card component takes in 3 props in here. So what we want to do is we want to pass in the relevant props and then make sure it works. So if we look at the example of the movie card being rendered on the home page, in here it says movie card and then it takes in the movie. So all the values of the movie. So if you hover over it, it's the type of movie. So in our scenario, it will be the type of movie, which takes in a title, rating, and image URL. So essentially what we want to do in our unit test is we want to render out the movie components. So you can see here, Copilot is suggesting what we can do, which is exactly what I wanted to do. There's a few differences that we need to make. So first of all, what we want to do is you can do the extraction of get by text in here like so, where we destructure what we need from the component that we render. But I don't want to do this, but this is a way you can extract get by text and so on. Let's just delete that for now. Now we want to render the movie card. So first of all, this keyword comes from testing library React. So that's the first thing, which is what we need, which is render a certain component or whatever it may be. This scenario here takes in the title as inception, it takes in the rating, and also the image URL. So we need to also import in our component, and generally because it's in the same file we can just do movie card from dot like so, because the index file is what we need to import it from. Then we've rendered our component. Now we have our expectations in here. So we had our get by text before that we was kind of destructuring from our render, but what we have is something. So let me just copy this out for now, or comment this out for now. And in here we have something called screen. Now, what I want to do is I want to see what gets rendered when I pass in these props into this movie card component. So what we can do is do screen.debug like so, and then we need to import screen from testing library React as well like so. So now if I save this, what I want to do is I want to test this file. So what I can do now is do npm test like that. But what we need to do before we do that is we need to make sure that this script is in our package.json. So let's go ahead in our package.json. In here, we have certain commands. So you can see here, dev, build, start, lint. We want to add another command, which is basically test like that. And what we can do is we can do watch all, detect open handles, and force exit as well. So let's just save that. Now, if I do npm test again, you can see the command is now running and it's saying something has happened. So let's just go into here. Now you can see it says cannot find module, testing library, Jest DOM, extend, expect. And actually, what we need to do is in our Jest setup over here, we want to just do this, which is testing library / Jest DOM. So now if I do npm test, you can see our command is running and you can see our first test has passed. So now you can see we have a total of one test suite, one test in here. We have 0 snapshots. We will look at them later on. And then this is the time it takes. And if we scroll down, you can see here, because we had the watch command in our package, in our test script, what happens is we can press F or P, T, Q, and so on. So you can basically rerun only failed tests. You can run the test related to the change files and so on if you just read this bit here. But what I want to do is in my test, so let's go back into our movie card test file. You can see I did this, which is screen.debug. So basically this is like a console log. It logs out the entire component that we have rendered. So let's scroll up, and now you can see this has rendered out our movie card component based on what props we passed in. So you can see here, this image has an alt title, alt name of Inception. Again, the title is rendered as Inception in the H2. So if you look in our index.tsx over here, the title is a H2 again. You can see the same class name applies here. Again, the rating is also 4.8 and that applies as well. So that is essentially how it works. And then what you would do is you add your expectations in. So expect and so on. So let's do that next. But what I want to do first of all is I want to show you that when we change this, so let's change this rating to like 4.2 and then save. This will rerun everything. It does the screen.debug, but now you can see it says 4.2 in here. So let's just change it back to 4.8. And now I want to comment out the screen.debug because this is for debugging purposes if you don't know actually what is getting rendered on the page. So let me just uncomment these out. We know that it's rendering Inception. It's on the page as the H2 over here. And we also want to check that the rating is 4.8. So it's saying here that it cannot get by text. So what we should do is with what we did with screen.debug, screen has a few relevant matches that we can kind of see here. So if you hover over it, it says the matcher and then the options as well. So again, same with this one. Again, it's saying Inception and the rating in here. So that's the first part done. It's passing, but what's happening here is saying property to be in the document does not exist on type Jest matches element because this is coming from React testing library. So how do we fix this? You can see here that the test is passing. That's fine. Everything's working correctly. But what we want to do is we want to fix this TypeScript error in here. So what we need to do is add our Jest setup file because we're importing testing library in here into our TS config. So in TS config, you can see this include section in here. What I want to do is include in the Jest config, so jest.setup.js, actually this one. And then let me just check that everything is working now. You can see it's not working because I've not saved it. Let me save all, and then let me do Command Shift P, restart the TypeScript server, and now you can see that error has gone. So now that we've created our unit test, now what we want to do next is do the same for our movie details.